So welcome to Her Body and Mind podcast. Today we're going to be talking about self-worth. Self-worth is a tricky one because self-worth could be talked about in 100,000 different ways.
Sure can.
So we decided today to talk about self-worth and how it shows up in relationships for women because it's too broad otherwise. And we'll talk about self-worth in a lot of different ways over the course of this delightful podcast. But today we're going to talk about how it shows up in relationships. Mm-hmm. So welcome here.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to start by talking about what self-worth is, because I think the definition piece is maybe helpful.
Yep, for sure.
And then we'll just kind of go in and see what we have to say about it.
Yeah, sounds good. So what is it?
Well, self-worth and self-esteem get mixed up a lot. People will be like, I have good self-esteem. I have good self-worth. I think self-esteem is derived from like action, more external kind of forces. So you could have good self-esteem if you're like really good at squash, for example, and you get like lots of really good reinforcement because you're kicking butt and you're doing well. You could have self-esteem.
Is it like individual to like a particular thing, like good self-esteem toward like squash as an example, like, or is it more broad?
I think it can be more broad. I think that self-esteem can be built from how you get reinforced externally. So people can, I think the point is like people can have really good self-esteem, but still have really low self-worth. Because self-esteem is like an action thing. So you could be good at squash.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a particular thing about you that you're good at, but self-worth is more global.
I would say self-esteem is easier to achieve and self-worth is more foundational to your sense of self.
Okay.
So self-worth, I always say to my clients, is like the foundation that like everything else is built on.
Okay.
So it's like that core, like we talk about like sense of self a lot. Mm-hmm. Self-worth is like that core sense of self. And so it's helpful to differentiate those two because people often think they have good self-worth, but what they actually have is good self-esteem.
Yes.
But that foundation, shiraki.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
So if we're talking about relationships, how self-worth, which is that foundational piece, is going to show up in relationships with women. Mm-hmm. If it's not there, it can be really, really, really tricky.
Yes, I can attest to this.
Yeah.
Very much so. So with then self-worth, I'm going to get them mixed up.
It's okay, I'll correct you.
With self-worth, when or how or what dictates, I feel like I have a bit of context for this, but for everybody else, like what causes not so good self-worth?
Yeah. I think self-worth is from experiences. And so the biggest thing is that self-worth isn't like decided. You didn't like wake up one day and be like, you know what? I think I'm going to start hating myself. Right? Like it's a byproduct of experiences. And I think that there's a lot of shame with self-worth for people. Like it's hard for people when I say to a client, like I say this a lot, I'll be like, okay, I am good enough. Is that true or not true? And they'll be like, if there's like shame to say no. Because like we want to have self-worth.
Yeah. You know, you should, but you're like, I actually truly don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like helpful to say that that comes from the way we're treated. So foundationally early childhood experiences. So did you have parents that lifted you up? Did you have parents that tore you down?
Yeah.
Or did you have parents that kind of didn't know what you were doing? Mm-hmm. And so that piece, and then it's further established like in relationships. So like when we talk a lot about our kids. I work really hard to make my kids have good self-worth.
Yeah.
But I'm acutely aware that those girls could end up in a terrible relationship. And although that foundation's there, it can get ruptured throughout the lifespan.
Right. So it's not just starting in childhood. It can, that you could have really good self-worth, have a really good upbringing, but then as a teen, date a not so nice boy.
Not so nice boy.
Right.
And then that would be unfortunate.
That would be.
And I think if your self-worth is strong, you're less likely. And I think that's where we see these like cycles of patterns with self-worth, because if you have this foundation and you're like, I'm good.
I'm worth more than whatever this boy is doing to me. So then you're less likely to fall in that kind of scenario in your teens or your adulthood.
Yeah.
So you're not 100% protected, but you're more likely to be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where we see like cycles of trauma happening, because I think it comes back to that self-worth piece.
Totally.
So if we talk about relationships, and we talk about how self-worth shows up in those relationships for women, I think it's helpful to talk about like how self-worth, kind of exactly what we're saying, helps us like pick our partners. I would say that, I don't know how you feel about this, but I would say one of the most important decisions humans can make is like Marge.
My dog is stirring in the background. Just ignore. Oh, no, you can't. There she is.
There she is. I think that self-worth is probably critical in who we choose. And I think who we choose is maybe the most important decision. One of the most important decisions human beings make.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Yes, it is.
Tell me more.
From a personal experience?
Whatever you want to do.
I feel like I've gotten the choice to choose this many times, and one particular time I chose very wrong, and it was all rooted in, again, like self-worth stuff. And I mean, the consequence of that and having to be in an environment with a person who you're already going in with self-worth issues, and then it just compounds. So like every time you have an experience with another person who is like similar to the previous experience because you also had it just, So I think it just slowly chips away at you more and more and more until you're 40 and you're like, what just happened? Yeah.
But you also kept choosing, like in your experience, you could be married many times.
Oh yes.
But you keep, which is evident of your self-worth, like ultimately that you kept choosing not to move forward with some of these people that like weren't ideal for you.
And I think that's where like another thing is like, there's a lot of like females who seemingly are, successful and all these different things. And yet from the outside, no one would be like, oh, Sierra has self-worth issues or has this past or this previous, you know what I mean? So it can still manifest. There's like a piece, a part, like as you talk about like IFS, it's like there's a part there. And it's tricky.
Well, that foundation, like maybe not fully in relationships. We'll talk about this in other episodes. But when I've done lots of my own therapy, because I've done a lot of therapy, when we break it down, and I haven't liked it either, but it's like that core belief. It's like, oh, damn it. It is that. It is, I'm not good enough. And so you have to unpack some earlier stuff because it shows up in a billion ways. So I see it all the time. Like you talk about like these successful women, and sometimes they're just like, my relationship isn't fitting. Like, it's like, maybe it's still good and it doesn't mean we have to like leave the relationship, but I think it's about starting to kind of figure out how we feel about ourselves and then how we feel about ourselves, being curious about like how that's showing up in these critical relationships if we are in a long-term relationship as a woman.
Totally.
Right?
So what are the, like in your experience then, like, what are some of the things that you see on repeat with your clients whether there's like a level of acceptance for this or just different behaviors on their side that like the more common things you would see in women that like maybe they wouldn't realize that's rooted in a self-worth issue.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is like self-abandonment.
Yeah.
And I think we do this as women for a variety of reasons, but I think one way is we're just so used to putting ourselves second. And we've maybe learned that since childhood, especially if we were raised in an environment where our needs weren't met or we weren't focused on in maybe the best optimal way for our development. So we see this like in a lot of the like,
you just get used to like, that's how it's supposed to be. It's like, you're supposed to like abandon your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own desires for
the betterment of someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Whether that's a parent or a spouse. Yeah.
So people will say in session a lot, like, well, they'll talk about how they're frustrated in their relationship, but they're not talking about it with their partner.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And
totally.
so this can come back down to like, say if we look at like division of household tasks.
Yeah.
This is a big one.
We talked about this last night.
We did actually, because this is already a complex loaded one. Because I think we talk about society and society expectations and like gender norms.
What the mom's supposed to do versus what the dad's supposed to do.
Goodness gracious. Right? But then if you throw self-worth, which is like this topic in there, it does dilute it and make it a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
Because until you can even start being curious, Margaret, until you can start even questioning whether you should have more help, then you don't even know to ask for more help.
Yeah.
So I think if you're like feeling a bit frustrated in your relationship and you and your partner are talking about it and you're like, look, like it's fall. Have you considered the fact that we need all new clothes for our children? And the dad's like, oh, yeah. Like even that conversation is indicative of self-worth because you're like, hey,
You can still stand up and say that.
deserve you to at least be, aware that this is a thing, that the like background work, the invisible labor that women are doing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of women don't even have that.
Yeah.
They're just doing the motions. They're doing absolutely everything. And they're not even really aware that they have the right to ask for help because their sense of self is so low.
Yeah. And that's going back more into like physiology. It's like, it's such a hardwired neural circuit to then like break that is quite challenging, because then someone like you can teach them like, actually, this is what's going on. So they learn the evidence is there. Someone has like affirmed that actually maybe that there's something wrong there.
Yeah.
But to actually flip that switch is not as easy as like, well, Amanda said that this is not right, so I should just start doing it differently. Then it's not that simple to just have that automatic thought go away, because it actually is a nervous system pattern and how we've trained our brain structurally to be formed.
Absolutely.
So you have to undo that. That's neuroplasticity.
Mm-hmm. And that's what makes this so tricky and so helpful to say that self-worth is this, like, it's the foundation of the house. It's the foundation of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's how we show up. And self-worth in relationships too, if we talk about like intimacy, if we talk about like female sexual needs, if we talk about female sexual desire, the ability to even think like, maybe my needs matter in this space, and like, maybe I have the right to ask for that also isn't part of it, because that's a whole other episode that we'll talk about. But like female sexual health and female libido and all of those things, like if your core sense of self, even if it's not fully like devastatingly terrible, like I'm a piece of whatever, but just this like, I matter, my needs matter.
Yeah.
For most women, that's shaky.
Yep.
And that's not always just coming from trauma. We even look at like our society. Like
it's a big part of it, just like the patriarchy and all that. Yeah. I can agree.
Yeah. Like, how do we get women to like buy the next skincare product? We like make them feel old, or like Sephora, or like makeup. It's like, that is marketed like
make them feel beautiful.
Yeah. Because you're not now, like you need the things. So I think how we feel about ourselves shows up in relationships, which finds women in my office. And I think probably finds women in your office too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. Like, it's not that I don't see it. And that's like a piece of a lot of women that, although that's not what I'm like supporting them with per se, whether I'm referring, but yeah, like, oh gosh, I would say 80-90% of women for sure are in that boat. Even if you would never think that they are, it's definitely a piece of their picture, unfortunately. Yeah.
And I think that's just part of this, because I think if we're talking about women's health, we have to start talking about women's relationships. And if we're breaking down marriage, how much of how you view yourself is impacting how you're showing up in that space. Right? Another one would be like, if we're having conflict in relationships, how do you think self-worth like shows up there? In
conflict. Well, I mean, you already brought up a point where you're like not even engaging. You're not even bringing up the point where you would maybe create conflict. You're avoiding it because you just don't feel like there's a point. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or just abandoning. So if there's like an argument that comes up, maybe if you're struggling with self-worth, you don't even, you just quickly abandon your own needs. So someone's upset with you, and then there's people pleasing. So that's where like my self-worth can come up and has come up. Yeah. Is like, that's a version of self-abandonment, especially if someone who you love is upset. If you have a part of you that has been impacted in childhood or from other things, it's really easy to just like swallow all of your own needs and just like do everything you need to do to make that person like love you again.
Or like, overcompensate even. Not even just like regular. It's just like the overcompensation of, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this shows up in friendships too.
Yeah.
Right? That like overcompensating, like you and I have known each other since we were 13. I have this loud part. I'm way better now, but in a conflict, I would do anything. I'd like sell my car and my house and do absolutely everything to make you not mad at me again. And that's how I used to present pre-therapy, because it was so And I think that's the thing, when that foundation of self isn't there, once it gets shooken, kind of like we talked about with trauma and self-worth, it's like wildly uncomfortable to have that poke, to be like, see, you're not good enough. You're not, this person's upset with you. So then you just like, you behave in ways that are not
you.
No.
Yeah. No,
Right?
it's just uncomfortable. And that's like the goal, I guess, is like to be able to stand up and not to like go back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think if we're talking about like, we both have, you have a teen daughter, I have younger daughters.
Yeah.
But even just starting to have those conversations with our like children and teens, and if we're a young woman ourselves, as we're dating, being curious about like, are you engaging in self-abandonment? And if so, where?
Yeah. And my daughter's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk about it. Maybe I should.
Unknown.
Hard to say. We'll ask for her consent later. My daughter's 17. She's like now in like a pretty serious relationship. She's been with him for over a year and a half, or something like that. Lovely boy.
Oh,
the best. He's the best. He's honestly is. But she had like, she dated two other boys. One was just kind of neither here nor there, just innocent, not great, not bad, just was. But there was one where it was like very evident that not the way. And had she chosen to keep that boy around, but I was, as a parent, I mean, don't take my advice, but, or don't do as I do. But I was pretty open with her about like my thoughts on this character, very transparent, and just broke down the pieces of like what was wrong, why, what she deserved. Using that language was like,
that's good.
No, like these are the traits. This is what you're worth. This is like, you know, and yeah, so it can be very powerful. And now, her being with this other boy, she looks back, she's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, what?
But
God.
But that's, you did good parenting there. Like
I did good.
You're so good. But it's one of the most important decisions. I see so many women in my office in miserable relationships, and they can have the house and the great kids and they can have money. But if that like person that they've chosen to spend their life with wasn't the best pick, but now we're in it, and we can't really leave, or we feel like we can't, and it's not that bad, but it ain't that good. It's so critical. So to be a parent.
Yeah.
And so I think when we look even at parenting, we have to be able to be, like we talk about doing your own work. Like you have to kind of be curious about your own core sense of self. And then if you are raising young girls, boys too, for sure, but we're just talking about females.
We have girls.
Cis females in this episode today. But until you can ask yourselves those questions, and maybe you're not even curious about your girls, but asking those questions as a parent to be like, are you like self-abandoning, or like, are you just doing whatever they want to do? Or how are you showing up in conflict in these early relationships? Like that's critical. So this
is a hard reality for probably a lot of people listening, because tough pill to swallow. We're basically saying like, until you do your work, your girls, your boys, they will mirror the dynamics in your relationship. And that is essentially what you're passing on. And that's what I was passed on by my parents, no offense parents. But like, that's how she goes, generally speaking. Yeah.
And I think the kind of positive take home here is that like self-worth can be treated. Like, I think that's one of those like really cool things about therapy, is that you can either heal those injuries that were created in childhood, which like you and I have both done a lot of in our own therapeutic journeys, like heal those injuries. Or sometimes you just have to like create a foundational sense of self for the first time if it wasn't created, which is true for a lot of people. But even if you're in a relationship, it doesn't mean that maybe it's like once you figure out your sense of self, like you got to go.
No, that doesn't mean that.
No, but starting to be curious about your sense of self might allow you to have different type of dialogue with your partner. And that can just be so beautiful. And there's so many partners that will be like, I didn't even know that you felt this way, because maybe you've never had that like curiosity, or maybe in your whole life, you've never had the ability to say those things.
Yeah.
And your relationship can just like only flourish. Like it's quite beautiful sometimes.
You can grow together or apart.
Well, I think that's the thing of some of this work, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's like a hard thing to put in consent because I'm like, sometimes doing this deeper work makes your relationship not work really anymore.
Yep.
But sometimes doing this deeper work allows you to like live this life that we get one opportunity to live with so much more joy.
Yeah.
So I think the takeaway is be curious. Like be curious how you're showing up with your partner. Be curious how you're showing up with your friends. Be curious about like when your chest gets tight and why. Be curious if you are kind of engaging in some self-abandonment.
Yeah. If you're like thinking one thing, but that not wanting to say it or like, just suppressing things.
Yeah. And then like in a safe relationship, and that's one of these caveats too, is like, are you in a safe relationship? Because if you're in a safe relationship, a healthy relationship, you should be able to have conflict. You should be able to say like, hey, like we do that. I'll be like, hey, and maybe I'm saying it through like some tears, but I'll be like, this thing like made me feel this way. And then you're like, oh, okay.
We have these conversations with each other.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
We sure do.
Because it's a relationship. It's like a 25 plus year relationship, and friendship's the same. We can be self-abandoning in a lot of relationships, and it's actually just like really exhausting.
Totally.
Yeah. So be curious when and how you show up in spaces. And it's just, there's so many things that it could be, but this is just one of those things is like, how do I feel about myself? Question. So, tell us how you think about or felt or feel about this episode. Drop a comment below if you want us to talk about something different, or if you have like any further kind of follow-up questions about this. We would like love to answer.
Love the feedback, and any ideas, suggestions for the future, topics that you want to learn about. We're open.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical or mental health advice. We're not your doctor or your counselor. Please contact your own healthcare providers before you make any changes to your health and wellness protocols related to your body and mind.